అమ్మా అమ్మా డోర్ క్లోజ్ చేయి.
Good morning, sir.
గుడ్ మార్నింగ్.
Good morning, sir.
గుడ్ మార్నింగ్. Okay, let's get going. We finished John Locke yesterday, but since Rousseau is also a contractualist, albeit in a completely different sense of the term, sorry, albeit in a completely different sense of the term, we will be making comparisons between yeah. Did that come back to you, madam?
No, sir.
Okay. I must have done something stupid. No, I'm not well at all. I'm somehow managing to carry on because we don't have time and I don't even have the luxury to take leave now. Anyway, so don't worry about that. So you have Rousseau, who's a socio-contractualist. And since we're going to be doing Rousseau, it also becomes sort of inevitable that we make comparisons between Rousseau and Locke, and maybe even between Rousseau and Hobbes. But at the very outset, let me tell you that the comparisons with Hobbes, if any, will be very, very superficial. They'll just be cursory. But if you are looking at Locke and Rousseau, there is a great deal to compare. There is a lot to compare, and therefore that basically means the comparison is not in the nature of similarity, but the comparison will be in the nature of dissimilarity. And one thing that you must understand about Rousseau is that his contract is not a contract in the same sense as the Hobbesian and Lockean contracts are. His contract is something which is very, very different, and that'll become clear as we go along the way. I have to first draw your attention to this thing called Romanticism, because among the different characterizations of Rousseau, you will find that a significant body of scholars believe that Rousseau is essentially a romantic or a romanticist, and he's very unlike Locke, who's a product of the Enlightenment, the first Enlightenment. So in that sense, he's a rationalist. People would say the same thing about Hobbes as well, though his rationalism defies the conventional rationalism of people. So what you need to understand is that it's not as if people call Rousseau a romanticist or a romantic. Rousseau is also called a rationalist. And it is not an easy resolution to find out if he is a romanticist or if he is a rationalist. There is no straightforward answer here. So if we look at Rousseau, ఇప్పుడు the thing that we need to understand is that there is a tradition of philosophers. If you want their names, not that it is important. There was Jean Baudin, Jeanbodin. Jean Baudin was a part of this tradition. Then you have Voltaire, who was also a part of the tradition, as was Baron de Montesquieu, the man who misunderstood the British system and thought that there was a separation of powers, when in reality, what was there at that time was only a fusion of powers. So if you're looking at Rousseau, then if he's a part of this tradition called philosophs, philosophe in French is a philosopher. So if he's a part of a tradition of philosophers, then there is definitely a rational angle to him. Shut up. So there is a rational angle to him and his writing. But Rousseau stop it. Stop it. But Rousseau, in his early writings, Rousseau emphasizes the fact that artists are better equipped than writers and philosophers who cannot bring out romantic ideas the way an artist It can be a painter, not a wall painter, a painter, a sculptor, and who else? Yeah, a sculptor, and there's one more name that I'm not getting.
Music, what about musician?
That is the word I missing. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I think I can end it here. Not like that. So if you're looking at it, so he says, he seems to be saying that Romanticism is better expressed by a painter or a sculptor or a musician. Okay. And you would also see that Rousseau himself, while not being an artist of any note, there is another Rousseau who's a painter of the 19th century. His name is Henri Rousseau, Henri, which in English is Henry, but in French it is Henri. Henri Rousseau is one painter, but let's not confuse Jean-Jacques Rousseau with Henri Rousseau. Okay, Rousseau believed in the inadequacy uh, yeah, he believed in the inadequacy of words. Therefore, you see him ignoring romantic poets. So we were taught about Wordsworth in school as a nature lover, and it was done mainly, I think, on the basis of one of his poems that was taught to us then. It was called Daffodils. I remember that. So daffodils was mainly used to show uh, Wordsworth as a romantic poet. Later on, when I was doing my BA, we were also told that P.B. Shelley or Percy Bysshe Shelley and John Keats were also romantic poets. There is definite merit in the argument that Wordsworth, though he has been criticized by literary critics, and I believe that literary criticism is an ignoble thing. It's very sure. So it's an ignoble thing because you're sitting in judgment. Probably if you're given a pen and paper, you can't write. You can't write. But when somebody writes, you're ready to criticize that. So I'm not a big fan, like Rousseau, of critics of art and literature. I'm not a big fan because it's a very ignoble thing. If a sculptor is creating a sculpture, there is a great deal of imagination. There is a great deal of effort and skill that go into making of a sculpture by the sculptor. So you can't look at it like this and say, "Yeah, this is nothing." You can't, because you're not capable of doing that. Whenever I found people criticizing sculpture, I've told them I'd like to see you carve a sculpture. When people have criticized paintings, I have asked people to paint themselves and show how much better they are. So it's a very ignoble thing, this whole literary and art criticism. Wordsworth has been called a plodder, Plodder, one who plods. People say there is no inspiration that you can feel in Wordsworth's poem. My question is, why do you need inspiration? And for what do you need this inspiration? What are you going to do if you're inspired? But I do agree that John Keats does not deserve a place among the Romanticists, because John Keats suffered a lot in life. He died at a very early age. He died a young man. He was only 25 years old when he passed away. And most of his poems are about his own condition in the world. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is also a part of self-expression. But to call him a romantic is not such a great idea, because if you look at Keats, where is the civilizational part in his writings? Where is the civilizational part? It's not there. So I wouldn't put him in the category of romanticism. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just saying that you cannot put a potato among tomatoes. That's all I'm saying. The potato has its own merits, but it is not something that goes into a basket of tomatoes. So you can leave Keats out, but Shelley was perhaps the greatest of the lot, because he was not just a writer, he was also a warrior who took part in the Greek Civil War at that particular time, because he believed in the righteousness of the cause that was there behind the war. And hence, you will find that Shelley actually goes and takes part in the war and dies again at a very young age, the same age as Keats, 25 years old. That was what he was. Keats died of poor health. Percy Bysshe Shelley died fighting for a cause that he believed in. So to me, that makes him completely exceptional, absolutely exceptional. He is somebody who did what no other poet did. How many poets do you know who went and fought a war? But this is all not answering the question that we need to answer, which is,
Sir,
yes, ma'am,
when do we call a person romantic?
coming to that only.
Okay.
That's what I said. We have talked about romanticism, but we haven't done anything to.
How to define romanticism also, sir, in short?
I'll do it now.
Okay, okay.
I'll do it in short and long,
Okay.
both. Don't worry about that. So if you look at Romanticism, it is normally associated with love, chivalry, and gallantry. And if it is Indian movies, then it is dancing around trees or wherever you can dance. Now, that's what Romanticism is associated with. Generally, when we talk about Romanticism, what is it? Love. Okay. And then we talk about chivalry. Chivalry is that great gentlemanly attribute that you have, and how um, how somebody shows or displays to a woman that he cares about her. So I remember this instance from my younger days. I was a very, very bad person in those days. My dad was allowed to use, on the payment of a certain amount of money, he was allowed to use a vehicle which was then, it still is no longer in production. People say it's going to come back, but I don't know. It was an amazing vehicle, and me being the crazy fellow about automobiles, I told my father when they needed to buy a Jeep-like vehicle, I told them you should buy the Tempo Trax, which is now called the Force Trax. And my father didn't want to take my word for it. He called an engineer from the government department, asked him to evaluate the vehicle and certify it as viable. So that vehicle came. I was so smitten with that I gathered a bunch of friends, told the driver, you come with me, we'll go out. So said, okay. And so we decided we'll go to Nagarjuna Sagar. And there was this couple among us, and I think there was a mound which was probably 5 inches high, maybe 6 inches high. And so my gallant and chivalrous friend climbs that, gives out his hand and says, "Come, let me help you climb this." And she does climb. Till then it was okay. After that, what came was stupefying. This girl tells this chappie, "If it wasn't for you, I couldn't have climbed this." That is really stupefying because it was not more than 5-6 inches. So those are the things which are, that's a romantic behavior, by the way. Seeing qualities in people that actually don't exist. And I once went to a movie. It's Sangeet. And there was this guy and a dame next to him. And I think the movie was Cat People. If ever you get a chance, please see this movie, Cat People. It's a very mystic or a mystical movie. And it's got some great actors in it. Nastasia Kinski, Michael Douglas, and another chap, what is his name? An amazing actor, Michael McDowell. Okay, Michael McDowell. He was also there in this film. And some of the scenes in that are a little gory. So I find this gent sitting next to me being told by, I presume, his girlfriend that she feels like puking or vomiting. And so he says, he picks out his helmet and says, "You can vomit in this." So that is what we think is romantic. And it's not a wrong thing to think like that, because this is what we've been brought up on. Films have played a very, very crucial role. In fact, I once did an evolution of Indian cinema. I even wrote a paper on that, which I am unable to find. I talked about how the Indian cinema has evolved from being instructive to being completely nonsensical. So this was before it became nonsense. At least there was some chivalry here. So that's what we think is romanticism, and that is because in most cities of India, think about it, what do you have as entertainment. In Bombay, they say there is theater. They say there's theater. And I thought theater meant something like Shakespeare and that kind of stuff. And when I went, I saw one of the performances by Harsh Patel. You wouldn't know that chap. He was a very short guy, very fat. And the play I remember was called Son of Bottoms Up. And the only significant clothing that Harsh Patel wore throughout that play was a huge diaper. That's about it. I was trying to think to myself, these Bombayites say that we have the tradition of a theater. What theater do they have? Nonsense. Complete nonsense. It's not that one play that I've seen. I've seen so many. In Pune, they have this Lavani dance, which can get to be very, very vulgar. The kind of gyrations and all, they can become very vulgar. And I'm not a prude. Huh? The only thing that I don't like, and where you can call me a prude, is toilet humor. Like films like Delhi Belly and all. Jesus, God save us from those. That's the only thing I can't stand. Toilet humor. Okay, but everything else I'm pretty open-minded. Now also I'm quite open-minded. You have the theater, have it. But don't try to tell others that you don't have something we have, which is so great. What you have is rubbish. Paresh Rawal brought his troupe here many years ago and did a play called Naughty at 40. Again, you can make out from the title itself what kind of play that might have been. So you can't say just because they have the culture of going to the theater, it's not very different from seeing the movies that we see. They are filled with all the rubbish that is there in movies. The only movie star whom you cannot criticize, as far as I'm concerned, please never criticize this movie star in front of me. The only movie star I find totally amazing is Akkineni Nagarjuna. Previously, when there were fights in movies, the hero used to hit and the villain also used to hit. Then it would last some 1 minute or 2 minutes or whatever. The fight would last. But ever since Nagarjuna appeared on the scene, no fight lasts more than 2 seconds. If there are 20 people, Nagarjuna hits all of them and you'll see they're writhing in pain. And that is not a good thing for me. Now I have to writhe in pain. So except Nagarjuna, who's We have son of bottoms up, so we can have father of Superman. Okay. So except him, I'm open to criticism of everyone. But please don't ever criticize Nagarjuna, because he'll come and bash you and you can't get up. Just one hit. That's it. Anyway, so we are very informed by our movies, and the idea of romance that we have has come to us from these movies. Okay, so that is the idea of romance that we have. Romance is also love in most countries, as is chivalry, gallantry. After all, we didn't we didn't get into the celluloid medium on our own. We got in there thanks to the Western culture. Though the early Indian films were rooted very squarely in Indian culture. That is what I said when I said in that paper that I wrote, and also a lecture that I gave in ASCII, Administrative Staff College of India. I gave a lecture on popular culture, and there I picked up cinema as popular culture, and how in India it has gradually degenerated over a period of time. So much so that you have idiots, scoundrels like Ram Gopal Verma, whom people call Sir on LinkedIn. So that's where it is now. But even abroad, like I said, it's not because of movies. It is their own culture to be chivalrous. In fact, have you heard of this word? Anyone who has heard of dueling? No?
Fighting.
Fighting with weapons, guns.
With?
Guns or some kind of weapons.
For what? Fighting for what?
To make your point or decide something.
No. Dueling has a very specific meaning. No guns, nothing.
Two people fighting, sir.
Two people fighting for what? Two people fighting, yes. But for what? Two people fighting with their swords. Okay? And they're not allowed to use shields. You had to fight without the shield in the left hand. That which is called dhal in Hindi, the shield. Without that, to protect yourself, two people will fight to decide who marries a girl. And it's a fight unto death.
It's like fencing, sir.
Something like that.
Okay.
It is something like that, but fencing, you take precautions.
Hmm.
But this is like fencing, you're right, but you don't have any cover, and it is fight to the death till one dies, sometimes both die. Okay, that is to win over a girl. So dueling is also considered to be in India. Of course, we had Swayamvara, which is where people, kings, princes, not kings, princes of a certain caliber, belonging to a certain kingdom of a certain size, uh, they would fight. Not they would come looking at their best. Sometimes they had to pass a test. Most times it wasn't that. Whoever the bride is used to go through the entire line with a garland in her hand. And she liked someone, then she put the garland. So what you need to understand, what you basically need to understand, this is a bit of a digression, but I'll come back to this point when we talk about feminism. In India, we did not have patriarchy like the West had. We did not. Men didn't get to have girls standing in line and saying, "This is my wife." Women had that right, not the men. And therefore, you will see that the feminine is also sacred in India. Shakti. See, there are different words to describe the universe. One is Vishnu, as I told you, which is an all-permeating spirit. Since the Dashavatara thing was added on and these became avatars of Vishnu, so Vishnu became a male. Actually, otherwise he's Ardhanarishwara, as is Shankara, Ardhanarishwara, half man, half woman. But you also have Shakti. You also have Shakti, which is a feminine way of describing the universe. That the universe is Shakti. Adi Shankaracharya, who is believed to be the biggest proponent of Shaivism, he was, no doubt about it. But he wrote that famous thing. Does anyone remember what it is called? It goes, I Giri Nandini, and then Mahishasura Mardini. I don't know, I've forgotten what it is called. in that he is singing praises of the female form. He is singing praises of Shakti. Now people say Parvati is Shakti. It is not. It's not there anywhere that Parvati is Shakti. No. Okay. But in India, at one point, more people referred to Shakti. And Shakti is also Prakriti. Prakriti is not just nature. It is not just nature, but it is the entire universe. Purusha is not as powerful in the lore as Prakriti is. And in fact, the Yajurveda says that a man without a woman is only half, and a woman without a man is also only half. And that is the reason why you have the worshipping of the Shiva Linga, which I told you is not just the Linga, but it is also the female genital, the yoni. So it is worshipping copulation, fornication, call it what you like, but it is seen as the basis of all human life and the life of the universe. So in India, we didn't have this thing that women are inferior. We don't say we have landed on earth thanks to Eve doing something bad. Original sin has to be washed off. We don't have all those things. We really don't. Anyway, to come back to the point, so all these are being considered romantic. But is this the definition of romantic? Technical definition of romantic or romanticism. Is this it? It is not. Romanticism represents a disillusion with the new capitalist civilization and the cleavages that it was causing to appear in society, and therefore it is a rejection of the beliefs of the Enlightenment. The rational civilization believed that it was doing something good for human society, but Romanticism believes that it only does bad. So, if you have to understand the Romanticism in its technical sense, if you like, you can also use the word philosophical sense, that is. So what you find here is a lack of acquiescence to the new civilization, a rejection of Locke's idea that capitalism is the only solution to poverty. It is a rejection of all those things. So it's a rejection of that. So you see it in many ways. The most important Can you give me a minute? I unnecessarily did that jig and now I'm in great pain. I'm not able to sit. Please permit me 1 minute, just 1 minute, not more. extremely sorry. Very sorry for doing this. But I just couldn't sit anymore. It was... Anyway, so what is Romanticism in the technical, philosophical sense of the term? It is a total rejection. They're not saying we'll retain something. On what grounds are they rejecting it? The grounds on which this is one prong, okay, of Romanticism. It rejects because it doesn't believe that human beings could subjugate nature and use the bounty of nature for the betterment of the individual, and that no force could stop the flourishing of the rational civilization. This is one prong, okay? This is one prong on which you have anyway. The second prong I thought I went for a walk. Apparently, Akshay Podishetty also went for a walk. Nice. Yeah. So the second prong of Romanticism is that it rejects the capitalist civilization as well, on the grounds that capitalism is not a solution to poverty. I'll say it here. It is a capitalist. Okay. There is a third prong as well. Okay. Get lost, please. Okay, very nice. Thank you. There is, oh my,
Sir, what is meant by bounty?
bounty is plenty or something that is available bountifully. Basically means that there's a lot of it, plenty. Okay. The third prong of the romantic or romanticist is that it is also it being capitalism and industrial revolution and the effects of both, but especially latter, which is industrial revolution. Industrial revolution and the effects of but especially the latter were causing a denudation of nature, meaning nature was being sacrificed for the sake of industrial growth. So this is the third prong of a rebellion, disagreement, call it whatever you want to.
Sir,
Yeah,
Romanticism is pro-capitalism or against capitalism?
against. Completely against capitalism and industrial civilization. Totally against it. If somebody tells you to the contrary, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. Okay, so we've seen three prongs. Now let's go to what Rousseau said. Okay, Rousseau said that artists, painters, we've discussed that, sculptors, all these people were better at expressing romantic ideas, romanticist ideas. But before we go there, please remember See, this is what happens when your brain is not working. It's not an ordinary pessimism. It's a philosophical. It is a philosophical pessimism, and therefore it believes in the idea that the past was better than the future, than the present, sorry. This is diametrically opposed to the rationalist belief that the present and the future will be more, will be better than what was. So rationalism into a better state of living, but Romanticism believes that the future is worse than the present, will be worse, not is, will be worse than the, it'll be worse than the present, and that the present is already worse than the past.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
so can we say that the Romanticists were against war and power-hungry, conquering nations?
Yes, they were.
Right.
You had a rekindling of the Romanticist movement in the 1960s. Okay, when America was going and fighting the Korean War, they were fighting the Vietnam War. So at that time, you had this thing called the hippie movement. Okay, and the hippies were pacifists. They didn't believe in war. They believed that all of humanity could basically live as one without having to fight. And they did not, they went to an extreme where they said everything that comes with human civilization is unnecessary. So many of them didn't cut their hair. They were basically, quite a few of them were nude. And if you want, please listen to the hippie anthem, not just the hippie anthem, but this anti-war, this kind of civilization. It's by John Lennon, John, John Lennon. Why is that happening, sir? And the name of the song is Imagine. Okay. If you do a YouTube search, if you're really interested, you can get to that song. It's got wonderful lyrics, wonderful lyrics. It ends with this line, these lines. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll all join us and the world will live as one. That is when John Lennon was originally with the Beatles. He left the group, went solo, and he created this masterpiece of a song. So yes, romanticists are anti-war. They're
Yes.
absolutely anti-war. And that is still there. The hippie movement is not so powerful, but it is still there. And these are all pacifists. These are all pacifists. They don't like war, aggression. Okay, so what we're looking at is that Romanticism believes that the future will be worse than the present, which is already worse than the past. So Romanticism came up That was the main slogan of Romanticism. Let us go back to nature. It also said, let us go back into the past. Underlying these statements so society, nature, and species, spe- species being. Okay, this is what Romanticism is in a nutshell. Madam Padma wanted a brief definition. The brief definition is this.
So this is what Marx also said, right, with regard to alienation.
Yes, Marx also picked up alienation, but he picked it up from two people. The first was Rousseau. The second was Hegel. Hegel also talks about there being alienation. The Hegelian notion is extremely complicated, his notion of alienation. But alienation is definitely central to all these three people, Rousseau, Hegel, and Marx. If you read some sections of the Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant, he also argues that over-reliance on reason or rationality is something that can actually cause alienation. But people don't usually talk about Kant. I'm one of those few people who talks a lot about Kant. Otherwise, most political theory, political philosophy teachers don't mention Kant. But Kant is an important figure because he's an offshoot of this. Okay, now let me wind up with this point. With this belief held strongly, Romanticism gives a clarion call for the unity of human beings into one society, and it also changed many things, including the idea of the aesthetic. Romanticism generated a completely new idea of what the aesthetic should be, and also about how nature is always more powerful than the human being. This is this outcome of that. Well, you have exams day after today and sorry, what am I saying? Tomorrow and day after, I guess. So when I meet you on the day after that, I'll give you some concrete examples of the romantic aesthetic. And well, you can also say here, this is also the beginning of the second enlightenment, which is the French Enlightenment, and how it generates a concept which Charles Taylor calls expressivism. So kindly do me a favor. Whoever comes, whoever has been here today and will return back to the class after the exam is over, please
Sir,
remind.
the exams are on 6th and 7th. So tomorrow we can have a class, right?
It's on 6th and 7th.
Yes.
Then why was that woman saying I should?
Friday and Saturday, sir.
This great lady has been telling me, question paper, you're late. Oh, okay. So we'll have a class tomorrow.
Yes.
Most definitely. Right. But
And
somebody remind me about expressivism. No, I'm writing it down here. Expressivism, second enlightenment. Aesthetics. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something, ma'am.
yes, sir. We need to prepare till whatever we covered in both the papers.
Till Locke, yes. But that's a charade. We just do it.
Yes.
Okay, then. I'll see you tomorrow then.
No
Thank you,
evening
sir.
class, sir, today.
Ma'am, I'm not in a shape at all.
Okay, sir.
If I'm in, I was hoping I'll feel better, but I've got worse since yesterday. Let's not go into the reasons for that. So we'll have the evening classes from next Monday.
Yes, sir, sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take care, sir. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.